It's no secret that Scott Dixon solidified himself as one of the all-time IndyCar greats. He currently sits at 53 wins and 6 championships. Despite all those wins, there's one win that stands out in particular, and that is his very first one, which was his one and only win in the kart series before he transitioned over to the IRL in 2003, which now is the IndyCar series that we have today. That win would come at the now defunct Nazareth Speedway, and it was only Scott Dixon's third start in IndyCar. Nazareth was a unique tri-oval track that came in just under 1 mile. It was a staple to American open wheel racing from the late 80s all the way up until its closure in 2004, where Scott Dixon actually scored the last win for the kart series before IRL took over in 2002. It was also a permanent fixture on the NASCAR Busch Series schedule from the late 80s all the way up until its closure in 2004 as well. Scott Dixon was driving for Pac West Racing, and he actually qualified in the 23rd spot on the 12th row of the grid, the second slowest car to put a qualifying time up. So needless to say, he was far from the favorite going in.
They close in tightly. They all understand how critical the start is and how difficult it is to pass. Green flag flies. Junqueira and Breck go side by side. Junqueira is forced down low. We have a car sliding.
Looks like Brian Herta threw the cake off to the inside.
And at best, he brushed the wall, if he even did that. Of course, yellow comes out immediately. Now the car's nice and clean.
The yellow flag would come out immediately as Brian Herta, trying to put the power down, would lose control and do sort of a half spin, but unfortunately he stalled the car, which would bring out the yellow flag. And he would not be the only one to do that, as when the race tried to get restarted, it happened again.
Elio Castroneves got himself in trouble.
Same problem as before with Brian Herta coming off the last corner. He picks up the throttle. Keep in mind, they've reduced the boost back to 37 inches, but they've regained all the power and more that the rules change was meant to eliminate. You can see cold tires, low downforce, picks up the throttle, the back end steps out, he catches it and continues full course yellow.
The officials were quick to throw the yellow flag once again as Elio Castroneves did a little half spin, only lost a few spots, and no major issues came about this. Scott Dixon was towards the back of the pack and his team was already playing strategy, topping off fuel under this caution. And now finally the third time is the charm to get this race underway.
We were looking at Christian Fittipaldi because there was a report that there was some smoke at the back of his car. Green flag comes out. This time Kenny Breck got a good jump on the green and accelerates away. Oriol Servia is second. Junqueira is third. There's Tony Kanaan and Cristiano D'Amata. Best friends off the track, love to race one another on the track.
Finally, at lap 11, the race is officially underway, and this restart was pretty calm and not that exciting at all, as everyone made sure that they got away clean. With 50 laps complete and some green flag racing, Scott Dixon was still down in the 20th spot, the second to last car on the lead lap, and leader Kenny Brack was not that far behind him, with only Alex Zanardi in the 21st place in between Dixon and the leader Brack. On lap 65, the next car in front of Kenny Brack was Scott Dixon, but it proved to be very difficult to pass, as Kenny Brack, who's had the fastest car by far to this point, took several laps just to get around Alex Zanardi, who was in the 21st spot. Over the next 10 laps, Dixon would manage to hold off Kenny Brack and prevent himself from going a lap down, and then we would see the third caution of the day as 4th place Michel Jourdain Jr. lost control while stuck behind the lap car of Alex Zanardi. He did one of those half spins, but the caution would still come out.
As we look again,
Paul Tracy there on the back, but you see Jourdain right on the front of the screen, losing it coming off the final corner. We've seen that all weekend long. Does a nice job here, keeps the steering lock in, anticipates the car coming back straight ahead on the grass. That's a tricky bit of driving at 140 miles an hour plus as the car slowed down there.
And essentially the same part of the track that we've been talking about. We've seen a good number of situations develop.
Different problem here. He's probably a little over anxious to get on the throttle. There's a big bump coming off the corner. We could see everyone backed up. You could see Tracy putting the pressure on Fernandez behind him. He was trying to get up behind the car in front of him with the bottling up behind Zanardi, and he just looks like he picked the power up just a split second too soon. 900 horsepower, spins the rear tires, and around he goes. But good bit of driving, keeping it off the wall, exiting that corner.
With that lengthy green flag run, obviously everyone would come into the pits for a pit stop for tires and fuel, and this would essentially put everyone back on the same strategy, even though Scott Dixon and Brian Herter were really the only ones that were carrying some extra fuel. The race would restart on lap 83 with Kenny Brack still in the lead.
So did Tracy, looking for green. We've got it. We're back racing at Nazareth.
You've probably heard me say this on my channel before, but those kart era cars, the look and the sound is just unmatched, some of the best race cars of all time. As the race hit the halfway mark on lap 113, the caution would fly once again, as Tora Takagi would be the next one to fall victim to the half spin. He would keep his car going without even stopping and using the access road, but the kart officials were quick to throw the yellow flag. Kart was a series that was known for being pretty hesitant to throw the yellow flag, but obviously this being a short oval and the risks much greater, and cars way more condensed, it was definitely better to just throw the yellow and be safe rather than sorry.
There it is.
Same place, coming off the last corner, on the power, over the bump, back in, steps out, catches it, drives it down the warm-up lane, and back out onto the track.
Now things would get a little interesting under this caution, as we would have some split pit strategy. Most of the front running leaders would stay out, but several other drivers would come in to take fuel and tires, including Scott Dixon. If you've been following my channel for a while and seen some of my previous videos of races I've covered, especially from the 90s and early 2000s, you would know that it's sort of a running joke that restarts are missed a lot. And in this case, they would happen here, and immediately there would be some action that was missed.
Well, back at Nazareth Speedway, while we were away, they brought the green flag out again, and then almost immediately ended up with two cars together. It's Carpentier and Gilles de Ferran. Excuse me, Tagliani and Gilles de Ferran.
Coming down into turn 3, de Ferran looking down on the inside. Tag turns towards the apex. They make contact right front to left rear, spinning both cars into the wall.
Both cars catching the wall with the side, which is a better hit always. More cushioning over there. First reports are that everybody's okay.
Gilles de Ferran and Alex Tagliani made contact. Both cars went into the outside walls. Gilles de Ferran jumped out of his car relatively quickly, completely uninjured. Well, it took a little bit of time to get Tagliani out. He did suffer some minor back pain due to this accident, but he wouldn't miss any races or anything like that. This time the leaders would come down pit road, and this would be the first time all day that Kenny Brack would lose the lead, as Tony Kanaan would now be the leader of the race. As those guys that pitted the first time stayed out, well, all the guys that didn't, including most of the leaders, came down pit road for fuel and tires. After a very lengthy caution, we would finally see the green flag wave once again on lap 144.
Green flag is out. Here we go again. Whoa, close fight back there as Kenny Brack tries to come up through this field just as fast as he can and goes around Michel Jourdain Jr.
And that's what I thought would happen. Kenny and the group following him can't wait. I think they've got to go now, Paul, because these laps will wind down very quickly, and as difficult as it can be to pass here at Nazareth, he's got to take advantage of the fuel and horsepower and get those passes done as quickly as possible.
Now, to give a brief recap on pit strategy to this point, the top two cars of Tony Kanaan and Shinji Nakano cannot make it to the end on fuel, as they pitted on lap 76. Scott Dixon, who is now in the 4th position, made his last pit stop on 116, can make it all the way to the end as long as he could save some fuel. And the rest of the leaders, such as Kenny Brack, who now has to work his way up through the field, can make it all the way to the end on fuel without much of an issue. On lap 172, the field tightened up drastically at the front. Tony Kanaan was still leading Shinji Nakano, but Scott Dixon moved up to 3rd, and Kenny Brack worked his way all the way up to 4th place right behind Scott Dixon. And with Brack clearly having the fastest car all day and 2 of the 3 guys in front of him still needing to make a pit stop, it definitely looked like the race was going to fall right into Kenny Brack's hands.
Back live, Breck closing on Dixon.
But what's interesting here, Paul, is it looks like Scott Dixon is quicker through the kink. That is the bend just past start finish. With this reduced aero load, it's difficult for the drivers to do it flat. Everything has to be just right. It'll be interesting to see with this onboard if we can hear the engine and see, in fact, if he is going through the kink flat, because he is gaining ground at Kenny at that point on the racetrack.
It has now been 100 laps, just under 100 miles, since Tony Kanaan and Shinji Nakano, first and second, have pitted.
Coming off the last corner, let's listen to the engine now. No, he's got a pretty sizable lift going through the kink, but it's not apparently as much as Kenny's.
This is pretty much what Dixon is seeing in his rearview mirrors. And unfortunately for him, it's that glimpse from time to time of Breck, but he's holding them off pretty well.
He's doing an outstanding job. I'm actually a little surprised as we can see Paul Tracy now starting to come up behind Kenny Breck. I don't know if Kenny's had a balance change.
On lap 182, Shinji Nakano would be the first one to hit pit road, relinquishing second place to Scott Dixon. Less than 10 laps later, Tony Kanaan, who was desperately trying to hold out for a caution, would run out of fuel on track, giving the lead to Scott Dixon.
Well, figuring out where to put commercials in a race like this is a tough job, and the truck's been doing the best they can. Scott Dixon now has the lead. Kenny Breck into second, and why? We were right thinking about Tony Kanaan. Despite the fact his crew suggested they were going to keep him out for a while, his engine decided it wanted a little more methanol if it was going to do that. As he slowed, Scott Dixon took over the lead. And then as he headed for the pits, Kenny Breck thought he'd go to the inside. Well, wrong place to go. He had to sweep back to the outside and stay in second place ahead of Paul Tracy. But now he's climbing all over the back of Dixon. And Dixon should be pretty close on fuel too.
He sure should. The logic here is that if Nakano's got a Honda and Kanaan's got a Honda and they both come in at the same time and Nakano comes back in at the end of his fuel run, that obviously Kanaan's got to be coming in sometime soon. Well, Scott Dixon came in as the same as that group. He must be making fuel out there. One thing I've noticed, though, with Kenny Breck is his car looks extremely loose. That's why I think his hard charge in the beginning must have put a premium of wear on those rear tires, and that's why we're not seeing him attack aggressively with Scott Dixon. But Scott Dixon has got to come into the pit lane sometime soon.
There was a little bit of confusion there in the broadcast booth. Scott Dixon did not pit on the same lap as those guys. He stayed out to cycle to the front on the same lap as those guys, but those guys pitted on lap 76 while Scott Dixon was in on lap 116. So there was a pretty big difference in fuel, with Scott Dixon only having a little less than Kenny Breck, who was behind him, and we all know that Kenny Breck is good to go to the end on fuel. Scott Dixon was doing a hell of a job maintaining the gap to Kenny Breck behind him. Scott would stretch it out a little bit getting through lap traffic, but Kenny Breck would reel him back in. But once he got to a certain distance within a couple car lengths, it seemed like Kenny was just kind of stuck there. But things would definitely start to get interesting, as with 10 laps to go, the caution would come out once again when Michel Jourdain Jr. spun out, did not hit anything, kept the car going, and it was a relatively quick caution, so we would see a restart with 7 laps to go.
And as you pick the power up coming off the corner, watch the back end of the car step out. He stands on the throttle, an excellent maneuver. Whoa, that was close with Christian Fittipaldi. If he would have hit the brakes, it would have taken him right into the outside wall. Perfect driving.
With so few laps left and track position obviously king, the leaders would stay out, and Scott Dixon would try to finish this one off for his first career win in only his 3rd kart start.
All of this out now if he wants to win. And he does a pretty nice job of it as Dixon accelerates away from second place Kenny Breck. That section under the yellow helped Dixon, if and we're absolutely sure it is, if fuel was a factor.
We can still see Kenny working the wheel. Keep in mind, during that yellow, he's maximized the weight jacker, the anti-roll bars in the car, everything he can to get the looseness out of this car. We can still see the back of the car is quite nervous.
The rookie trying to score a win on an oval. Let's see if he can do it. Kenny Breck is right there. Traffic just ahead. He's just got to negotiate this traffic. Kenny Breck drops back a little bit. Kenny Breck moves to the inside. Now takes the sweep to the outside. Doesn't look like it's going to happen for Breck, but it will happen for Scott Dixon. The rookie becomes the 46th driver to win in kart.
Good job, pal. Beautiful.
He scores his win in his third start. The 5th win for Pac West. He was so excited crossing the line. We've got one replay for you. And hopefully we're going to get it up. Here it is. Look at this. He bumps with Wilson as he's coming to the win. So Scott Dixon, a rookie in his third start, has taken the victory.
Scott Dixon scores the victory, his first of many IndyCar wins, and his one and only one under the kart banner. The rest all came under the IRL IndyCar banner, and at 20 years old kind of pulled off an upset victory. I would love to show you his interview after his first win, but unfortunately there was not one on this broadcast, as it just kind of abruptly ended right here, and that was it. Pretty unfortunate. Well, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and revisiting one of the greatest of all times. First career IndyCar win, Scott Dixon. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more IndyCar content just like this, and hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed this one. I upload every Tuesday, so I hope to see you guys in my next one. Take care, everybody.